Hello friends! In this video, I'll discuss the extremely rare class of vehicles known as steam-powered motorcycles. It so happened that the motorcycle appeared later than motorized tricycles and cars, and the dawn of motorcycle engineering coincided with the emergence of the internal combustion engine. It's absolutely logical that the vast majority of motorcycles were equipped with internal combustion engines from the very beginning. On the other hand, it was quite difficult to install a steam power unit on a two-wheeled chassis. Only a few steam-powered motorcycles were ever created. The topic remains fascinating despite that. Brew some tea and get cozy. I invite you to hear a few words about steam motorcycles. In the 19th century, bicycles became immensely popular and saw significant development across Europe and beyond. As technology rapidly advanced, it was inevitable that a power unit would be installed into a bicycle frame. However, even before the bicycle boom, in 1818, a steam power unit and turbines on both wheels were installed on a running machine designed by Baron Karl Dres. The machine was named
Vaporiana.
It is claimed that the technological marvel was demonstrated in the Luxembourg Garden in Paris on April 5, 1818. However, it must be said that the very existence of this machine is in doubt. Half a century later, two examples of bicycles with steam engines appeared almost simultaneously in two parts of the world. The first was the steam motorcycle of the American inventor Sylvester Roper. This marvel of engineering made its debut, according to some sources, in 1868, while others claim that an early prototype of this machine was ready as early as 1860. Sylvester Roper based his design on the Henlin bicycle, which had an iron frame, wooden wheels reinforced with iron rims, and a forged front fork. Behind the driver's seat, a steam engine was suspended on spring-loaded hooks to soften the jolts. At the bottom of the impressive cylinder was the firebox. The fuel used was finely crushed coal. The boiler was above the firebox, with two cylinders above it. Like a steam locomotive, long connecting rods drove the rear wheel. The seat also served as a water tank. To its right, you can see the steam pressure gauge. Even in this machine, rotating handles were used for control. In fact, the entire handlebar rotated. When rotated forward, steam was supplied to the cylinder. When rotated backward, the brake on the rear wheel was engaged. Roper claimed that his machine could climb any hill and directly reach a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. However, there is no evidence that such feats were ever accomplished. According to unconfirmed information, about a dozen Roper steam motorcycles were built. The machine itself has survived to this day and is now in a museum at the Smithsonian Institution in the United States. There are also modern replicas of this machine. Despite the advent of gasoline engines, Roper remained devoted to steam power, and in 1894, he designed and built his most advanced steam motorcycle, on which he regularly made 7-mile trips from his country house to his office, and back at speeds of over 40 kilometers per hour. In 1896, Roper decided to find out what maximum speed his steam cycle could reach. On the circular track of the Boston Velodrome, he managed to accelerate to 60 kilometers per hour. But on the third lap, the numerous spectators were horrified to see that the rider, who had previously been hunched over the handlebars, suddenly leaned back sharply and clutched his heart. The motorcycle veered off the track, flipped, and crashed multiple times. In an accident like that, the rider might have had a chance to survive, but the autopsy showed that Roper had died on the move from a massive heart attack. He was 72. The Michaux-Perreaux steam motorcycle, considered one of the first motorcycles, was invented and patented by Louis-Guillaume Perreaux in 1868 and built a year later by bicycle manufacturer Pierre Michaux in Paris. By the way, at first Perreaux wanted to use an electric motor as the power unit, but calculations of the efficiency of electric and steam engines favored the latter. Perreaux based his design on the Michaux bicycle with an iron frame, pedals on the front wheel, and a seat mounted on a long spring. A compact single-cylinder steam engine was installed above the rear wheel and had a multi-tube boiler with alcohol burners. To refuel the motorcycle, you had to fill two tanks, one with alcohol and the other with water. The burning alcohol in a special chamber heated the water in the coils to the point of steam. The steam moved the piston in the cylinder, and the belt transmission transferred the rotational force to the rear wheel hub. The engine's power was about 1/4 of a horsepower. Perreaux tried to document the results of the test, during which the machine covered 15 kilometers, reaching speeds of up to 15 kilometers per hour. However, Perreaux's motorcycle turned out to be expensive, 3,000 francs, and no one was willing to put it into production. In 1869, the Olivier Brothers bicycle factory closed down, and a year later the Franco-Prussian War began, so everyone completely lost interest in motorized bicycles. Now, this motorcycle is in the collection of Robert Granson. The next story is from Italy. Giuseppe Murnigotti was an Italian motorcycle inventor. During his lifetime, Murnigotti filed patent applications for 5 inventions. In his third application from 1879, he described the design of a motorcycle powered by a steam engine, in which hydrogen was intended to be used as fuel. Giuseppe never built a prototype, but a model can be found at the Museum of Science and Technology in Milan. Murnigotti also had plans to create a tricycle of a similar design. And this steam tricycle was built in 1880 and patented in 1883 by George Long from Northfield, Massachusetts. The tricycle was equipped with a V-shaped 2-cylinder steam engine with a cylinder angle of 90 degrees. Only one unit was built, which was dismantled after several years of use. There is a legend that the neighbors who owned horses were unhappy that Long rode his steam cycle on the roads. In 1946, a certain John Bateman, with the participation of the 96-year-old Long, reassembled this tricycle, which is now on display at the Smithsonian Institution. The specimen at the Smithsonian Institution was recognized as the oldest fully operational, self-propelled vehicle preserved in a museum. Later on, the world saw many more steampunk tricycles, for example, the designs of Léon Serpollet or Albert de Dion.
God bless spermatoxicosis. Without it, we may have been left with only bicycles.
The next one we're reviewing is again from the United States of America. Lucius Copeland from Phoenix, Arizona, presented his steam motorcycle based on the Star High-Wheeler bicycle in 1884. But in fact, this wasn't his first steam motorcycle, since he had experimented with a steam engine on a bicycle before. Columbia as early as 1881. Taking a Star bicycle, Copeland installed a steam power unit with 1/4 horsepower above the front wheel. At 1,000 revolutions per minute, the steam engine could cover 1 mile in 4 minutes. That is, if we convert it to standard units, the machine could reach speeds of up to 24 kilometers per hour. The fuel tank held 1 liter of gasoline. According to the inventor, this amount of fuel should have been enough for 1 hour of operation. The entire cylinder boiler assembly weighed only 9 kilograms, an excellent figure for that time. The engine's torque was transmitted by a belt to the rear wheel. Copeland was not only an inventor, but also a tireless promoter of the new means of transportation. He published brochures and personally traveled all over the United States demonstrating his marvelous machine in action. Later, in 1887, Copeland and Stanford Northrop founded the Northrop Manufacturing Company in Camden, New Jersey. There he produced about 200 units of the steam-powered 3-wheeled bicycle, the Phaeton motorcycle. He demonstrated this machine in 1888 at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington. The Hildebrand brothers, yes, the same ones who, together with Alois Wolfmiller, created the first production motorcycle in 1894. Back in 1889, they designed a steam engine for a bicycle. But something didn't work out with the steam engine, and a few years later, they were fully developing a motorcycle project with an internal combustion engine. Another steam motorcycle was built in 1896, by the Geneva Cycle Company from Geneva, Ohio, United States of America. It is known that the power unit was designed by Lucius Copeland and allowed this machine to accelerate up to 20 kilometers per hour. Naphtha was used as fuel. On one side of the front wheel, there is a copper boiler with vertical smoke pipes. To balance it, on the other side, there is a double-acting, single-cylinder engine with slide valves and a 1-gallon water tank. This motorcycle has been preserved and travels around the world as part of the Art of the Motorcycle exhibition at the Guggenheim Museum. Since around 1890, some record-breaking cyclists started using a tandem riding ahead to achieve higher speeds by following it in its slipstream. The tandem was faster than a single bicycle because it actually had twice the power, while the air resistance was almost the same. As speeds increased, the size of the tandems also grew. By the beginning of the 20th century, there were so-called quints with 5 cyclists in a row. Controlling such a vehicle required a high level of professionalism and coordinated actions. In 1899, the Stanley brothers built a steam-powered tandem bicycle for the famous cyclist Eddie McDuffie. McDuffie, following this steam cycle, in June 1899 at the Buttonwood Track in New Bradford, Massachusetts, set a new record. After the Stanley brothers sold their business in 1899, the design of the steam bicycle became the property of Locomobile. The Locomobile Company offered the model developed by Stanley in its catalog of the year 1900. The strangest thing about the design was that one person only steered, while the other was responsible for controlling the throttle, brakes, and all the controls for the burner and boiler. Despite the fact that the steam engine had proven it was possible to use it even on a bicycle, the future already belonged to a new type of engine, the internal combustion engine. That's exactly what happened. And if, before the beginning of the 20th century, steam-powered motorcycles were bold prototypes, there were a lot of prototypes back then. With an electric motor in the rear wheel hub, even with a power unit running on energy stored in a spring or compressed air, then with the start of mass production of internal combustion engines, this technology faded into the background. Steam motorcycles are still being built today, but only as an extraordinary, colorful steampunk attribute. Well, let's continue. The Field motorcycle was produced by Alfred Wallington Field from 1908 to 1914 in Clacton-on-Sea, 80 miles northeast of London. 2 models were built, if I'm not mistaken, as unique examples of steam motorcycles. The first Field Mark I appeared in 1908, and the second version, the Mark II, came out in 1914, over the course of 6 years of experiments. The motorcycle was equipped with a 2-cylinder single-acting steam engine. The cylinders had a diameter of 45 millimeters, the piston stroke was 50, and the power output of 6 to 8 horsepower was quite decent for a motorcycle weighing 75 kilograms at that time. The second improved version of the motorcycle featured a very clever steam boiler, which produced superheated steam at 400 degrees, allowing the power of the steam engine to be doubled to 15 to 16 horsepower. At the same time, a condenser for the exhaust steam was introduced into the design, which resulted in a smaller water tank. It should be said that the second version of the motorcycle was quite convenient to use. It only took about 3 to 4 minutes to start. It is known that both motorcycles have survived to this day in the Netherlands. Henry Pearson and Percy Cox from Britain were engaged in the design and production of steam cars from 1908 to 1916. However, the guys, in addition to cars, spent 2 years developing a steam motorcycle which debuted in 1912. The engine has a single-acting cylinder, produces 3 horsepower, has a cylinder diameter of 1 inch, and a piston stroke of 2 inches. Production of the motorcycle lasted only 2 years, until 1914, when Percy Cox sold his rights to manufacture the steam cycle to the Steam Cycle and Motor Company. One of these machines, built in 1912, is in the Science Museum in London. And here is a steam-powered motorcycle called the Steam Flyer. The inventor of this steampunk marvel, Niles Gillenwater. By profession, Niles was an engineer from Sacramento, California. After gathering various parts, Gillenwater began work in 1912. It took several years to build the motorcycle, and then Niles spent years modifying and perfecting it. The 250-kilogram machine made its first trip in 1922. With a water supply of 7.5 liters on board and 11.5 liters of fuel, the motorcycle could travel 24 kilometers without refilling the water. A high-pressure water tube boiler was used. Normally, the pressure was 44 atmospheres, but it could be raised to 69. At the same time, the motorcycle could reach speeds of up to 177 kilometers per hour. However, there is no evidence to confirm such a speed. Over the years, Niles Gillenwater received several offers to buy the motorcycle, one of which was from the French government. But in the end, he sold it to the Playland at the Beach Amusement Park in San Francisco. The Steam Flyer had a water tube boiler and 3 cylinders. The one and only Steam Flyer was eventually bought by Edward Zielinski, who founded the Mechanic Museum in San Francisco. The motorcycle is still in the museum in excellent and working condition. And this beautiful steam bike was built by engineer William Hallam from Hanham, Bristol, in 1914. The Haleson was an ordinary motorcycle produced since 1903, but after some time, a special version with a steam engine was built. Hallam experimented with small steam engines. At the end of the 18th century, the engine drawings of his motorcycle were similar to the patent drawings of Léon Serpollet from 1904. It had a vaporizing boiler for a fairly quick start and ran on paraffin. The generated steam powered a single-cylinder engine with a displacement of 200 cubic centimeters and side valves. The boiler and engine were mounted on a tubular frame, and the drive was belt-driven, with no need for a clutch or gearbox. The motorcycle has survived to this day, and in this video you can see that it is quite lively. The technical specifications, such as power and top speed, are not reliably known. The next few examples of steam motorcycles from the first half of the 20th century share one common feature. There is an extreme lack of any information about them. Here is the machine of William Taylor, built in 1917 on the basis of a motorcycle frame from the French company Fabrique Nationale. It is known that this machine was capable of reaching a speed of about 40 kilometers per hour. Taylor stated that the steam motorcycle did not work satisfactorily due to various minor malfunctions. And here is a steam cycle from 1919 built by a certain Valhert in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. To accommodate the 6.5 horsepower steam unit, the motorcycle frame had to be significantly lengthened. The wheelbase was 190 centimeters. However, despite weighing 160 kilograms and its impressive length, the motorcycle not only worked well, but also rode well. The next machine is Arthur Peirce's motorcycle. This amazing piece of equipment was built in 1936 by Arthur Peirce from Miami. I was extremely surprised to find original footage from those years showing the steam motorcycle in action, together with its creator. There was even an article about this homemade machine in the Modern Mechanic magazine from the same year. In this photograph, you can see John Barr's steam bike from the year 1940. Unfortunately, there is no clear information about this motorcycle. And this machine was built as a one-off by Ray Clift in 1947. The maximum speed that this motorcycle could reach is known. It was 60 kilometers per hour. The motorcycle wasn't developed further due to lack of buyers. It is now located at the National Motorcycle Museum in Anamosa, Iowa. In 1960, a steam motorcycle was introduced by Peter Lowell. The steam engine had a power output of 6.5 horsepower. 2 years later, Cyril Smith created perhaps the most miniature steam motorcycle based on the British minicycle Corgi. And finally, I'll mention Arthur Hubbard's steam motorcycle from 1973. As a base, a 1956 Michaux motorcycle frame from East Germany was used. A steam two-cylinder unit with an estimated power of 6 horsepower was installed in it, which was handcrafted over 4 years. The fuel consumption was about 3.7 liters per hour of operation. Kerosene was used. With the condenser, the water supply was enough for 2 hours of engine operation. Over time, the motorcycle was bought by a certain Dick Green. Dick put it in a chicken coop with the intention of repairing it. The motorcycle had technical issues at the time, but he died unexpectedly in 2006 before completing the restoration. The next owner was Ron Hubbard, who eventually restored the motorcycle. In fact, in the mid-20th century, there were more such homemade vehicles, but there is no information about many of them. There is something magical about steam mechanisms. Even today, there is a whole steampunk movement that is crazy about steam machines. It is exactly these kinds of enthusiasts who are still building steam motorcycles in the 21st century, either from scratch or by creating replicas of early steam cycles. Here are some examples of modern steam technology. Jeff Hadspeth's steam cycle was first launched in October 2000. Although the original concept dates back to 1972, Hadspeth was first demonstrated to the general public at the Great Dorset Steam Fair on August 29, 2001. The basis for Hadspeth's steam cycle was an ordinary pedal bicycle, built on a restored 1949 Velocilex frame, modified to use a homemade steam engine. The steam motorcycle has a range of about 16 kilometers on a single tank of water and a maximum speed of 32 kilometers per hour. The boiler runs on paraffin and produces a pressure of about 7 atmospheres. The second representative of modern steam motorcycles, and perhaps the most famous and recognizable one, is the Black Pearl of the Dutchman René van Tully. This curiosity was created in 2014 for the Ravatu Custom Shop and received the romantic name Black Pearl. Of course, Jack Sparrow's ship of the same name was famous for its phenomenal speed. This vehicle, on the other hand, is only suitable for leisurely motorcycle rides. The maximum speed you can reach on it is 8 kilometers per hour. René van Tully has long been famous for building unusual motorcycles, although he admits that the Black Pearl is the most original of his projects. He was inspired to create this steampunk masterpiece by the idea of Colby Higgins, a designer who, in 2012, proposed the bold, and at the time, seemingly fantastic concept of the Trini wreck. 8 months of painstaking work, and what seemed like a whimsical fantasy in the drawing has come to life. The unique bike debuted at the Big Twin Bike Show in Rosmalen, the Netherlands. Many enthusiasts are building steam motorcycles these days. Among them are Norbert Mesmerk, Kenneth Hamelgarn, Mark Drake, Simon Pierce-Smith, and many others. But this steam bike is strikingly different from all other modern steam cycles. The Keltrack company sponsored Chris Vedgwood and his team to develop a motorcycle that is supposed to break the speed record for steam-powered vehicles. It is known that back in 1906, the Stanley steam car accelerated to 204 kilometers per hour. In 2009, this record was broken by a British steam turbine car, which set a new speed record of 238 kilometers per hour. The legendary Suzuki Hayabusa was used as the basis for the motorcycle. The steam generator consists of a paraffin burner that heats a coil made of copper tubes filled with water. The 500 dig C superheated steam generates a pressure of 136 atmospheres. The steam is supplied to a V-shaped 2-cylinder Bauer and Bell engine, which has a direct chain drive to the rear wheel. As of 2019, the bike reached a speed of about 130 kilometers per hour, but Vedgwood expects to reach a speed of 193 kilometers per hour in the near future. Let's wish him good luck. At the moment, the motorcycle is fully assembled and is awaiting a series of tests. When asked why a steam-powered motorcycle, Alexei answers, "First and foremost, it's an engineering interest. working on every part, fitting everything together, and watching how it all gradually comes to life. You are the creator, it is the child. Secondly, there's a special romance to the world of steam. It's a unique element, just as vast and distinctive as the sea or airplanes. From his experience building the steam cycle, and the project began back in 2009, Alexei notes the following difficulties. First, despite the fact that the steam engine is considered the most studied of all existing engines and was developed for 250 years, nowadays it's basically a lost technology. Even though everything looks so simple, to create a proper steam engine, you have to dive deep into calculations. And there you'll find 6-story formulas, and humanity has never fully achieved perfect parameters. The second nuance is the complete lack of spare parts. Everything is made by hand. For example, even the rear wheel axle. It rotates together with the wheel and transmits torque from the engine. You can't find one like that on the market. The first 2 points lead to the need for numerous experiments with components and parts to achieve the required characteristics. And the last problem is the lack of a proper machine tool base. Abroad, tons of money are invested in creating a steam novelty, and sometimes even entire university departments are involved. Alexei does everything in his garage. Those are the details. So, that's about it for my few words about steam motorcycles. Steampunk technology is certainly colorful and unusual, but nowadays it's the domain of enthusiasts and fans, and it has no chance for mass production or commercial success. This was Crass Moto Channel. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.